Clinic owner disguises himself and discovers nurse being humiliated by her boss. Richard Thompson couldn't understand why his clinic was losing staff at an alarming rate. In the last 3 months, 12 professionals had resigned, all citing vague personal reasons that made no sense. That Monday morning, dressed in plain clothes and a dark blue cap, he entered through the back door of Mercy Health Clinic in Portland, pretending to be the new janitor. He had secretly arranged with Mrs. Wilson, the cleaning supervisor, who would introduce him as Robert Wilson, her cousin in need of work. "You'll start on the 2nd floor," Mrs. Wilson explained, handing him a cart with cleaning supplies. "That's where the main offices and the nursing station are, but be careful. Dr. Jennifer doesn't like to see cleaning staff during work hours." Richard nodded in understanding and headed upstairs, curious about this Dr. Jennifer. She was the head physician he himself had hired 8 months ago, with excellent references and an impeccable resume. According to the reports he received, everything seemed to be running perfectly. The 2nd floor hallway was quiet as he began mopping near the nursing station. It was early, just after 7 in the morning, and only a few employees had arrived. Richard noticed a young nurse organizing medications with precise, careful movements. "Good morning," she greeted him with a kind smile. "You're new here, right?" "Yes, I am. Robert Wilson. Nice to meet you." "Melissa, if you need anything, just ask. We help each other around here." Richard was struck by the woman's warmth. She had dark hair pulled into a bun, looked about 28, and her eyes carried a calmness that contrasted with the tense atmosphere he suspected existed there. The first sign of trouble came at exactly 8 o'clock. Richard was cleaning the hallway windows when he heard firm, decisive footsteps coming from the staircase. A blonde woman in a spotless white coat appeared in the hallway with a stern expression. "Melissa!" she shouted from a distance, making the nurse jump. "Did you check the files I left yesterday?" "Yes, Dr. Jennifer, they're all organized on your desk." Richard kept pretending to clean the windows, but listened closely to the conversation. Dr. Jennifer approached the nursing station with an intimidating posture, and Richard could see the tension settling in the air. "Organized?" The doctor's voice rose. "You call that mess organized?" Melissa lowered her gaze, clearly uncomfortable. Richard noticed other employees passing through the hallway, quickening their steps, as if trying to avoid witnessing the scene. "I'm sorry, doctor. If it wasn't how you wanted, I can redo it." "Redo?" The doctor cut in with a bitter laugh. "You should have done it right the first time. This is basic incompetence, Melissa. I don't know how you even graduated nursing school with this carelessness." Richard clenched the cleaning rag in his hands, fighting the urge to intervene. The public humiliation was completely unnecessary and disproportionate. He watched the nurse swallow hard before responding. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, back to the story. You're right, Doctor. I'll be more careful next time. Next time? Jennifer slammed her hand on the counter. Melissa, how long have you been here? 2 years, Doctor. 2 years and still making rookie mistakes. Honestly, sometimes I wonder if you're even qualified to work in a serious clinic like this. Richard saw tears welling up in Melissa's eyes, but she held firm, merely biting her lower lip. Other staff members passed through the hallway, but they all avoided looking directly at the scene, as if it were routine. The situation worsened when Dr. Jennifer grabbed a clipboard from the counter and began flipping through the papers dramatically. Look at this, she said, pointing to something on the paper. This chart has illegible handwriting. How is the doctor supposed to understand what you wrote? Richard discreetly moved closer, pretending to clean a nearby table, and could see that the writing was perfectly legible. The doctor was clearly making up problems. And this date here, Jennifer continued, her voice growing louder. It's smudged. This could cause confusion in the patient's treatment. Don't you care about our patient's safety, Melissa? Of course I do, doctor, the nurse replied in a shaky voice. I can redo all the charts if... No, you've already wasted enough time. I'll have Nurse Ashley redo everything. At least she knows how to do things properly. The silence that followed was awkward. Richard noticed two elderly patients who had arrived for morning appointments watching the scene from the waiting room, clearly uncomfortable with this display of authoritarianism. Melissa lowered her head and murmured an "excuse me" before quickly walking to the end of the hallway. Richard saw her enter a small storage room, likely to cry away from prying eyes. "And you?" Dr. Jennifer turned sharply to Richard. "Stop eavesdropping on other people's conversations and go clean the patient restroom. It's a disgrace." Richard nodded submissively and pushed his cart in the indicated direction, but his mind raced over what he had just witnessed. This wasn't just a case of authoritarianism. It was systematic workplace harassment. In the restroom, he found everything spotless, confirming that Dr. Jennifer had invented yet another reason to humiliate him. As he pretended to scrub the tiles, Richard reflected on how many employees had endured this degrading treatment. Half an hour later, as he left the restroom, Richard saw Melissa returning to the nursing station with red eyes, but trying to maintain her professional composure. She politely greeted a few patients and went back to work as if nothing had happened. "Psst," he heard a low voice behind him. It was a young man, about 22, also wearing the janitorial uniform. "You're Mrs. Wilson's cousin, right?" "I am. Tyler, isn't it?" "That's right. Listen, a word of advice. When Dr. Jennifer is around, make yourself invisible. She picks on everyone, but poor Melissa gets it the worst." "Why does she target the nurse so much?" Tyler glanced around to make sure no one was listening before answering. "No one really knows. Melissa is the best nurse here. All the doctors praise her work. But Dr. Jennifer has had it out for her since she arrived. Every day it's some new humiliation." Richard absorbed the information with growing indignation. As the clinic's owner, he felt responsible for allowing this situation to reach this point. Have a lot of people quit because of this? "Oh, tons. Melissa's only staying because she really needs the job. She supports her sick mother and has a brother in college." This made Richard's heart ache. Melissa was being psychologically tortured, but couldn't defend herself because she depended on this job to support her family. The rest of the morning passed with more humiliating episodes. Richard witnessed Dr. Jennifer scolding Melissa for taking 2 extra minutes on her break, forgetting to turn off a light in an empty exam room, and greeting a patient in a too familiar way. During lunch, Richard sat in the small staff break room and overheard revealing conversations. Melissa's co-workers spoke in hushed tones about the situation, showing solidarity but also fear of becoming the next targets. "Poor Melissa is getting sick from all this stress," commented a nursing assistant named Ashley. "Yesterday she had an anxiety attack in the bathroom." "And there's nothing we can do," sighed an administrative assistant. "If anyone complains, Dr. Jennifer makes up a reason to fire them on the spot." Richard struggled to swallow his sandwich. His clinic, which he had built with such care, thinking of the well-being of patients and staff, had become a toxic environment under the leadership of the very doctor he had hired. After lunch, an even more serious incident occurred. Richard was organizing cleaning supplies in the storage room when he heard shouting from Dr. Jennifer's office. "You're incompetent," the doctor's voice echoed down the hallway. "How could you mix up 2 different patients' test results?" Richard stepped out of the storage room and saw Melissa standing at the office door, holding 2 envelopes in trembling hands. "Doctor, I checked the names 3 times. I'm sure I didn't..." "Sure? You're sure?" Jennifer stood up from her chair. "So you're calling me a liar?" "No, doctor, I would never do that. I'm just trying to figure out where you made your mistake," the doctor cut in. "Your gross mistake that could have led to a misdiagnosis and put a patient's life at risk." Richard felt anger rising in his throat. He had only known Melissa for a few hours, but he could already tell she was too meticulous and careful to make such a grave error. The argument continued for another 10 minutes, with Dr. Jennifer accusing Melissa of various mistakes that clearly hadn't happened. Richard noticed some patients in the waiting room looking visibly uncomfortable from the shouting. When Melissa finally left the office, she was clearly shaken. Richard watched her hurry to the bathroom, probably to cry again. That's when he decided to discreetly follow Dr. Jennifer. He wanted to understand what was driving this cruel behavior. The doctor entered her private office and closed the door. Richard pretended to clean the nearby hallway, where he could catch fragments of a phone conversation. No, she hasn't quit yet. Dr. Jennifer's voice filtered through the door. I need to turn up the pressure. I can't let her talk about what she saw. Richard's eyes widened. That conversation suggested something much more serious was behind the constant humiliation. The rest of the afternoon was a succession of small psychological tortures. Dr. Jennifer criticized Melissa's posture when walking, how she spoke to patients, even how she arranged medications on the tray. At 6 in the evening, when official hours ended, Richard decided to stay longer to observe. Most staff had left, but Melissa remained to finish some reports. Dr. Jennifer also stayed, claiming she had administrative work to do. Richard hid in the cleaning supply closet, leaving the door slightly ajar to watch the hallway. Around 7, he saw the doctor step out of her office with a determined expression. She walked to the nursing station, where Melissa worked alone, finishing the day's paperwork. Melissa, Dr. Jennifer's voice cut through the silence of the empty hallway. We need to talk. The nurse looked up from her papers, clearly tense from the doctor's tone. About what, doctor? About your continued employment at this clinic. Richard felt his heart race. This conversation seemed to be the decisive moment Dr. Jennifer had been building toward all day. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Melissa, I'll be direct with you. Dr. Jennifer pulled up a chair and sat across from the nurse. Your constant mistakes are disrupting this clinic's operations. Doctor, I really try my best to... Try? Jennifer let out a cold laugh. Melissa, you made 5 serious mistakes just today. Mixed up test results, wrote incorrect notes, treated patients with excessive familiarity. Richard knew none of that was true. He'd watched Melissa all day and witnessed her dedication and professional competence. I'd like a second chance, doctor. I can improve. Second chance? Jennifer leaned forward. Melissa, you've had dozens of chances. The problem is you simply don't have what it takes to work in a quality clinic like this. Richard saw tears forming in Melissa's eyes, but she remained dignified. No begging, no groveling. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you resign, voluntarily, before I'm forced to take more drastic measures. The silence that followed was heavy. Richard could only hear the hum of medical equipment and his own rapid breathing. Dr. Jennifer, Melissa finally spoke, her voice steady despite the tears. I need this job. My family depends on it. If I made any mistakes, I can correct them. Oh, so now it's emotional blackmail. The doctor stood abruptly. Using your family situation to pressure me into keeping an incompetent employee. No, ma'am. It's not blackmail. It's just the truth. Jennifer began pacing like a predator circling its prey. You know, Melissa, maybe you don't grasp the seriousness of this. Your mistakes could lead to legal trouble for the clinic. And when that happens, guess who'll be held responsible? I take responsibility for my actions, doctor. You do? Jennifer stopped and glared at the nurse. So you admit you've been making mistakes on purpose? Richard saw the trap. The doctor was trying to make Melissa confess to mistakes she hadn't committed, creating legal grounds to fire her for cause. No, doctor. I didn't make mistakes on purpose. I said I take responsibility, but that doesn't mean I did anything wrong intentionally. Now you're contradicting me again, Jennifer's voice rose. First you make mistakes, then deny making them, and now you're challenging me. The situation was becoming unbearable. Richard could see Melissa was at her emotional limit, yet she held firm, remaining professional. Dr. Jennifer, if there's a specific issue with my work, I can review all my procedures, but I won't confess to mistakes I know I didn't make. You won't. Jennifer stepped closer, her voice low and threatening. Melissa, do you know what happens to nurses fired for cause? It's very hard to get hired anywhere else. Richard clenched his fists. This was pure blackmail. Then tell me. Melissa stood, meeting the doctor's gaze. What exactly do you want from me? For a moment, Jennifer seemed taken aback by the nurse's directness. She hadn't expected Melissa to confront the situation head-on. The doctor hesitated for a few seconds. I want you to admit your mistakes and resign. It's that simple. What if I don't resign? If you don't resign, I'll start a formal disciplinary process, and I guarantee that in the end, you'll be fired for just cause with your professional reputation ruined. Richard could no longer stay hidden. That threat had crossed every acceptable line. He stepped out of the storage room and walked slowly down the hallway, making noise with the cleaning cart to announce his presence. "Good evening," he said, feigning casualness. "I came to grab some supplies I forgot here." The two women turned to him. Melissa seemed relieved by the interruption, while Dr. Jennifer showed irritation at the breach of privacy. "What are you still doing here?" the doctor asked sharply. "Mrs. Wilson asked me to do one last check of the supplies before leaving. Sorry to interrupt." Richard entered the storage room near the nursing station, but left the door open, making it clear he could hear any conversation. His presence completely changed the dynamic of the situation. Jennifer seemed to realize she couldn't continue her threats with a witness nearby. "Melissa, we'll continue this conversation tomorrow morning. Think carefully about what we discussed." The doctor walked away with firm steps, leaving Melissa alone with Richard. The nurse sank heavily into a chair, clearly emotionally drained. Richard pretended to search for something in the storage room, but watched Melissa discreetly. She covered her face with her hands and took several deep breaths, trying to compose herself. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Melissa looked at him in surprise, as if she hadn't expected a janitor to care about her situation. "I'm fine, thank you." "Sorry, it's none of my business, but that sounded like a really tough conversation." She hesitated for a moment, clearly needing to vent. "It's just, sometimes work gets complicated, you know." Richard closed the storage room door and approached carefully, not wanting to seem intrusive. "If you want to talk, I'll listen. Sometimes it helps to speak with someone not involved." Melissa studied him for a few seconds, weighing whether she could trust him. "Do you promise not to tell anyone?" "I promise." She took a deep breath before speaking. "Dr. Jennifer, she's trying to force me to quit. Every day she makes up problems with my work, humiliates me in front of others, creates awkward situations. Any idea why? At first I thought it was just her way of working. Some doctors are stricter, but over time I realized she only treats me this way. With other staff, she's normal." Richard absorbed the information, confirming his suspicions. "She mentioned something about mistakes you'd made." "That's the strange part." Melissa leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Richard, I've been a nurse for 6 years, never had issues anywhere. Here, before she arrived, I got praise from the other doctors. What changed when she came?" Melissa fell silent for a long moment, as if deciding whether to share something important. "Something happened about 3 months ago that might explain everything." Richard sensed he was about to uncover the missing puzzle piece. "One night I stayed late to finish some reports. It was around 9. The clinic was practically empty. I passed Dr. Jennifer's office to get a pen I'd lent her, and the door was slightly open. And I saw her forging one of the partner doctor's signatures on some documents. They were prescriptions for controlled medications, lots of them." Richard felt a chill in his stomach. Forging medical documents was a serious crime. "You're sure of what you saw?" "Absolutely. She was copying Dr. Michael's signature using one of his prescriptions as a model. When she noticed I was there, she quickly tried to hide the papers and asked me what I was doing there." "What did you say?" "I made up some excuse and left in a hurry, but I think she could tell from my face that I'd seen something." Richard began to understand the situation. Dr. Jennifer was trying to force Melissa to resign to keep her from exposing the forgery scheme. "And you never told anyone about this?" "Who could I tell? She's the head physician. She has all the credibility. Who would believe a nurse's word over hers? Melissa, do you realize this explains why she's trying to push you out?" "I've suspected it for a while, but what can I do? If I report it without solid proof, she could turn this against me. And if I leave, she's free to keep doing what she's doing." Richard pondered the complexity of the situation. Melissa was trapped in a moral dilemma. Report without enough evidence, or stay silent in the face of a crime. "Did you ever see what she did with those fake prescriptions?" "Once I saw her hand an envelope to a man who didn't look like a patient. It was in the parking lot after hours. They talked really fast and he drove off. With each revelation, Richard grasped the severity of the situation better. His clinic was being used for an illegal scheme to sell controlled medications. Melissa, I know you don't know me well, but can I give you some advice? Of course. Document everything. Write down dates, times, everything you witness. If things get unbearable, you'll need concrete proof. Do you think I should report it? Richard chose his words carefully, remembering he had to maintain his cover. I think you should protect yourself first, but I also believe situations like this can't keep happening indefinitely. Melissa nodded, taking in the advice. Richard, thank you for listening. It's been weeks since I could talk to anyone about this. Don't mention it. And remember, you're not alone in this. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The next morning, Richard arrived at the clinic determined to gather more evidence against Dr. Jennifer. He'd spent the whole night thinking about the situation and concluded he needed to act fast before Melissa was forced out. The day began with another round of public humiliation. This time, Dr. Jennifer accused Melissa of leaving medication out of the fridge overnight, which could have compromised its effectiveness. Melissa, do you know how much an imported insulin vial costs? The doctor shouted in front of 3 diabetic patients waiting for care. Doctor, I checked the fridge 3 times before leaving yesterday. I'm sure everything was stored properly. Sure, that word again. Jennifer stomped her foot. You live on sure, but the facts show your incompetence. Richard, who was cleaning nearby windows, noticed the patients were clearly uncomfortable. An elderly woman whispered to her husband that the nurse seemed like a very polite young lady and that the doctor was being too harsh. Dr. Jennifer, Melissa tried to stay calm. Could I review the medication storage protocol with you to make sure I'm following it correctly? No, you should know it by heart. The doctor stepped closer. Melissa, your negligence is costing this clinic dearly. That's when Richard decided to test a theory. He discreetly made his way to the clinic's internal pharmacy and checked the temperature log of the refrigerator. The device had an automatic record showing the temperature had remained stable throughout the night. Dr. Jennifer was lying yet again. During lunch break, Richard managed to access Dr. Jennifer's office. As the owner, he had keys to all the rooms, though few knew this. He quickly entered and began searching for evidence of the forgery scheme. In the middle desk drawer, he found several sheets of clinic letterhead with attempted signature copies. He immediately recognized the signatures she was trying to mimic. They belonged to the 2 partner doctors he had hired alongside Jennifer. Richard discreetly photographed the documents with his phone and kept searching. In the cabinet, he found a large envelope filled with completed prescriptions for controlled medications, all with signatures that were clearly forged. The most shocking discovery was a ledger with names, phone numbers, and amounts. It was a list of clients who illegally purchased the medications. Richard quickly calculated that the scheme moved at least $15,000 a month. Just then he heard footsteps in the hallway. He hastily put everything back in place and left the office, pretending to clean the doorknob from the outside. What are you doing here? Dr. Jennifer's voice made him jump. The doorknob had fingerprints, Mrs. Wilson said to keep everything spotless. Jennifer eyed him suspiciously for a few seconds before entering the office. Richard noticed she quickly checked the cabinet and drawers, as if suspecting someone had tampered with her things. By afternoon, the tension had risen considerably. Dr. Jennifer called Melissa into her office for another private conversation. Melissa, yesterday you said you'd think about our talk. Have you reached a decision? I have, Doctor. I've decided I won't resign. The silence that followed was tense. Richard, cleaning the nearby hallway, could feel the shift in the air. You won't resign? Jennifer repeated slowly. Even knowing the consequences? I know you can fire me if you want, but I won't make it easier by resigning over mistakes I didn't make. Melissa, the doctor's voice dropped dangerously low. You're making a very serious mistake. Maybe, but I'd rather make this mistake than abandon my principles. Richard was impressed by Melissa's courage. She was facing an impossible situation with admirable dignity. Very well, Jennifer said after a long pause. If that's how you want it, we'll do this officially. Starting tomorrow, you'll be under administrative review. Any slip-up, no matter how small, will result in termination for cause. Understood. And Melissa? Jennifer stood. I hope you're not under any illusions about spreading stories. No one will believe a troubled employee over the head physician. Richard sensed this was a direct threat related to what Melissa had witnessed 3 months earlier. When Melissa left the office, he saw her hurry to the restroom. He waited a few minutes before knocking. Melissa, it's Richard. Are you okay? I'm fine. Her voice was muffled. Just need a minute. Listen, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet after work? There was a pause before she answered. Sure. I'll wait for you in the parking lot. At 6 o'clock, Richard found Melissa sitting on a bench near the parking lot. She looked exhausted but determined. Melissa, what I'm about to say might sound strange, but you need to trust me. I'm listening. I'm not really a janitor. I'm Richard Thompson, the owner of this clinic. Melissa's eyes widened, clearly shocked by the revelation. What do you mean? I disguised myself to find out why so many employees are quitting, and I ended up discovering much more than I imagined. She studied him for a few seconds, processing the information. Can you prove this? Richard took out his wallet and showed his documents. Melissa examined everything carefully before speaking. So, you saw everything she did to me these past 2 days? I did, and I heard your conversation last night about the prescription forgery. Mr. Thompson, Melissa stood up quickly. I want to make it clear that I never participated in anything improper. When I saw that, I was so shocked that... Melissa, calm down. I know you have nothing to do with her scheme. In fact, that's exactly why she's trying to force you out. You believe me? Not only do I believe you, but I have proof of what she's doing. Today I went into her office and photographed documents that prove the forgery. Melissa sat down again, clearly relieved to finally have someone who believed her. Mr. Thompson, I didn't know what to do. Every day that passed, she increased the pressure. I was already thinking about quitting just to end this suffering. And that's exactly what she wants. Melissa, I need your help to gather more evidence against her. Would you be willing to help? Of course, what do you need me to do? Richard explained his plan. Over the next few days, Melissa should continue working normally, but discreetly document any irregularities she witnessed. Richard would remain undercover, collecting additional evidence. But there's one important thing, he warned. She can't suspect that we know about the scheme. If she realizes, she might destroy the evidence and fabricate serious accusations against you. I understand. I'll keep acting normally, even with all the humiliation. Melissa, I'm so sorry you've gone through this. As the clinic owner, I feel responsible for not noticing sooner. Mr. Thompson, you couldn't have known. She's very clever at hiding what she does. The next morning, Richard arrived at the clinic with renewed determination. He had planned every step of the operation he would execute in the coming days. Dr. Jennifer was especially aggressive that Thursday. Early on, she accused Melissa of arriving 3 minutes late. Something Richard knew was a lie, as he'd seen the nurse arrive promptly at 7 in the morning. Melissa, punctuality is a matter of respect for colleagues and patients, Jennifer declared theatrically. Your lack of commitment is affecting the whole team. Doctor, I arrived on time at 7 sharp. Don't argue with me, Jennifer slammed her hand on the desk. I saw you coming in late. Are you calling me a liar? Richard, who was pretending to clean the hallway, noticed how Jennifer was deliberately creating confrontations to justify firing Melissa for cause. Around 10 o'clock, Richard witnessed a scene that definitively confirmed his suspicions. Dr. Jennifer received a man in her office, the same one Melissa had seen in the parking lot. Richard managed to discreetly photograph the visitor's license plate. During the appointment, which lasted only 10 minutes, Richard overheard fragments of the conversation through the slightly open door. Need 20 more prescriptions by Friday. The man's voice was low and nervous. It'll cost more. Medication is in short supply, Jennifer replied. No problem. People pay well for this. Richard had just witnessed an illegal transaction for controlled medications happening inside his own clinic. When the man left, Richard noticed that Jennifer walked him to the parking lot, which was unusual for a regular medical appointment. They spoke for a few more minutes near the car before the visitor drove away. During lunch, Richard decided to dig deeper. He used his authority as the owner to access the clinic's computer system and check Dr. Jennifer's appointment records. What he found was alarming. Over the past 6 months, Jennifer had logged dozens of after-hours emergency visits, always with patients whose names weren't in the clinic's regular records. These visits were always paid in cash and never generated official revenue. Richard cross-referenced the dates of these ghost appointments with the information Melissa had given him about the parking lot encounters. Everything matched perfectly. That afternoon, the tension between Jennifer and Melissa reached a new level. The doctor accused the nurse of losing a vial of controlled medication, an extremely serious allegation that could lead to criminal charges. "Melissa, the morphine vial from the pharmaceutical cabinet is missing. You were the last person to access it," Jennifer declared in front of other staff members. "Doctor, I didn't touch any morphine today. I didn't even need to open the controlled substances cabinet." "You didn't?" Jennifer laughed sarcastically. "Then how do you explain the vial disappearing right after you organized the medications?" Richard knew this was Jennifer's final move. Accusing Melissa of stealing controlled drugs would be a way to fire her for cause, while also discrediting any future complaints she might make. "Dr. Jennifer," Melissa kept her composure, though her voice trembled. "Can we review the security footage? It'll show I didn't touch the controlled substances cabinet." Jennifer hesitated for a moment. Richard realized she hadn't accounted for the security cameras in her plan. "The cameras aren't clear enough to show details like that," Jennifer said quickly. "What matters is that you had access and the medication is gone." "But other people accessed the cabinet today too," Melissa argued. "Why am I automatically the suspect?" "Because you're the problem employee here," Jennifer snapped. "Melissa, your questionable behavior has been noticed for months, and now this." Richard decided it was time to step in discreetly. He approached the group, pretending to wipe down a nearby table. "Excuse me," he said, addressing Dr. Jennifer. "I was cleaning the medication cabinet earlier and noticed one of the locks was loose. Maybe the vial fell behind the cabinet?" Jennifer glared at him. "What do you mean? These things happen, right? I've seen medications slip behind furniture before. Want me to help check?" Richard's suggestion put Jennifer in a tough spot. If she refused, it would look suspicious. If she agreed, her lie might be exposed. "That won't be necessary," she said quickly. "We'll let administration handle it." But Melissa, encouraged by Richard's idea, took charge. "I'd like to check, doctor. If the medication is there, it clears everything up." "Melissa," I said. "Excuse me," Melissa interrupted firmly. "Since I've been directly accused, I have the right to clarify this." Richard felt proud of Melissa's courage. She was finally standing up for herself against these baseless accusations. The three of them went to the controlled substances cabinet. Richard pretended to search behind it, while discreetly watching Jennifer's reactions. "Here it is," he exclaimed, holding up a vial of morphine. It was fallen behind the cabinet, exactly as I thought. Jennifer's face turned red with anger, but she couldn't openly show her frustration without raising suspicions. "Well, at least the medication was found," she muttered through clenched teeth. "But that doesn't change the fact that there was negligence in handling it." "Doctor," Melissa stood her ground firmly. "With all due respect, I wasn't negligent. Mr. Richard found the medication exactly where I said it would be. That proves there was an issue with the cabinet, not with my work." Richard noticed other staff members had gathered to watch the situation unfold. For the first time, Jennifer was being publicly questioned, and she clearly didn't like the experience. "Melissa, it doesn't matter where the medication was. What matters is that you need to be more careful." Jennifer tried to regain her authority. "I will be, doctor. But I also hope situations like this are properly investigated before accusations are made." Melissa's direct confrontation visibly shook Jennifer. Richard realized the doctor wasn't used to having her authority challenged like that. For the rest of the day, Jennifer avoided direct confrontations with Melissa, but Richard noticed her making several hushed phone calls, as if she were plotting something. At 5 in the afternoon, Richard received an unexpected call. It was Mrs. Wilson, the cleaning supervisor. "Mr. Richard, Her voice was uneasy. "Dr. Jennifer called me asking about your cousin Robert Wilson. She wants details about him, where he lived before, his work experience." Richard felt a chill in his stomach. Jennifer was investigating his fake identity. "What did you tell her?" "I made up a few things, like we agreed. But she seems very interested in learning more about him. I think she's suspicious." "Mrs. Wilson, tomorrow morning I won't be coming in as a cleaning assistant anymore. It's time to reveal my real identity." "Are you sure?" "What if she destroys the evidence? I already have enough evidence. And if I wait any longer, she might do something serious to Melissa." Richard hung up and reflected on the situation. Jennifer was growing desperate, and desperate people could take drastic measures. That night, he decided to stay hidden in the clinic to see if Jennifer would show up after hours. Around 9 o'clock, he saw the parking lot lights turn on. Jennifer had arrived with 2 men Richard didn't recognize. They entered through the back using her key. Richard followed them discreetly, keeping a safe distance. In Jennifer's office, he witnessed a meeting that confirmed his worst fears. The men were clearly buyers of the illegal medication, and they were pressuring Jennifer to speed up deliveries. "The police are getting smarter. You need to be more discreet," one of them said. "There's a nurse here who's seeing too much," Jennifer replied. "Then take care of her problem." Richard's blood ran cold. They were talking about Melissa, and the tone of the conversation suggested something far worse than just firing her. "I can't do anything too obvious. It has to look natural. Accidents happen. People get hurt at work." Richard had heard enough. Jennifer and her accomplices were planning to hurt Melissa, to silence her for good. He discreetly photographed the men and their cars, then went home to finalize his strategy. The next morning, he would put an end to this scheme once and for all. On Friday, Richard arrived at the clinic earlier than usual, but this time, he wasn't disguised as a cleaning assistant. He wore a sharp suit and carried a briefcase with all the evidence he had gathered. At 7 in the morning, when the employees arrived for their shift, Richard was waiting for them at the reception desk. The surprise on the faces of those who knew him was evident. "Good morning, everyone," he said loudly. "I'd like to speak with all staff in the meeting room in 5 minutes. It's important." Melissa arrived promptly at 7 and was visibly startled to see Richard in his true identity. He gave her a discreet signal not to say anything yet. Dr. Jennifer was the last to arrive. When she saw Richard, her expression changed completely. She tried to maintain her composure, but Richard noticed the panic in her eyes. "Mr. Thompson," she said in a controlled voice, "I didn't know you'd be visiting the clinic today." "Dr. Jennifer, we all have a lot to discuss." In the meeting room, Richard waited for everyone to settle in. Jennifer sat at the head of the table, trying to maintain her authoritative position. "Everyone," Richard began, "the last few days have been very enlightening for me. I've learned things about this clinic that I never imagined could be happening." Jennifer kept a neutral expression, but Richard could see the tension in her posture. "In the last 3 months, 12 employees have resigned from this clinic. I wanted to understand the reason behind these departures, so I decided to conduct a personal investigation." Richard paused, observing the reactions in the room. The employees seemed anxious to see where he was going with this. "During this investigation, I uncovered very serious things happening here. Things that harm our staff, our patients, and the reputation of this institution." Jennifer finally spoke. "Mr. Thompson, if there's an administrative issue, we can discuss it privately." "No, Dr. Jennifer. This conversation needs to be public because everyone here has been affected by what's been going on." Richard opened his folder and pulled out photographs of the forged documents. "Dr. Jennifer, can you explain why you were falsifying signatures on medical prescriptions in your office?" The room fell completely silent. Jennifer paled, but tried to stay calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't?" Richard placed the photos on the table. "These are photographs of attempts to copy the signatures of Dr. Michael and Dr. William, photos taken from documents found in your desk drawer." The employees leaned in to see the photos, and shocked murmurs began to ripple through the room. "And this," Richard showed more photos, "are prescriptions for controlled medications filled with these forged signatures, prescriptions that were being sold illegally." This is outrageous, Jennifer stood abruptly. You're accusing me without concrete proof. Without proof? Richard smiled coldly. Doctor, I have photos, witnesses, phone records, license plates of the buyers. I have enough evidence for a full criminal case. Jennifer looked around the room, realizing everyone was staring at her with a mix of shock and disgust. But the worst part, Richard continued, wasn't just the medication scheme. It was what you did to the employees who could have exposed you. He turned to Melissa. Melissa, can you tell everyone what you witnessed 3 months ago in Dr. Jennifer's office? Melissa stood up, still nervous, but determined to speak the truth. I saw Dr. Jennifer forging medical signatures. After that, she started harassing me, creating situations to force me to resign. And last night, Richard added, I witnessed a meeting between Dr. Jennifer and 2 men where they discussed ways to silence Melissa permanently. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Jennifer was visibly desperate. That's a lie, she shouted. This is a conspiracy to ruin me. Dr. Jennifer, Richard kept his voice calm. I have recordings of this meeting as well. Richard showed his phone with the audio he had secretly recorded the night before. Everyone, he addressed all the staff, I want to apologize for what you've been through. As the owner of this clinic, I feel responsible for not noticing what was happening sooner. Mr. Thompson, said Ashley, the nursing technician, how did you find out about all this? I disguised myself as a janitor this past week. I worked here as Robert Wilson, Mrs. Wilson's cousin. The revelation caused even more commotion in the room. Several staff members recalled their interactions with the new janitor. During these days, Richard continued, I witnessed systematic humiliation, emotional blackmail, false accusations, and a toxic work environment that harmed all of you. Jennifer, realizing she was completely exposed, made one last desperate move. You're going to believe this act, she said to the staff. He infiltrated here as a spy. How can you trust someone who lies about their identity? Dr. Jennifer, Melissa stood up bravely. Mr. Thompson didn't lie about anything important. You did. You lied, falsified documents, humiliated staff, and threatened innocent people. Other employees began speaking up, recounting instances of harassment they had witnessed or endured. The collective testimony painted a clear picture of the reign of terror Jennifer had established in the clinic. Dr. Jennifer, Richard addressed her directly, you're fired for just cause, effective immediately. Furthermore, all evidence will be forwarded to the proper authorities for criminal prosecution. You can't do this, Jennifer screamed. I have a contract, I have rights. You forfeited all rights when you decided to use my clinic for criminal activities and turned this place into a hub of psychological torture for the staff. Richard called clinic security to escort Jennifer out. Throughout the process, she kept shouting threats and accusations, but no one took her seriously anymore. Everyone, Richard addressed the remaining staff after Jennifer left. I know this has been traumatic for all of you. We'll go through a transition period, but I promise this clinic will return to the respectful and professional environment it should have always been. Mr. Thompson, asked Tyler, the janitor who had befriended Richard during his disguise, what happens now? Now we rebuild. We'll implement protocols to ensure something like this never happens again, and we'll value the employees who kept their integrity under pressure. Richard turned to Melissa. Melissa, I'd like to offer you the position of nursing supervisor. Your courage and integrity throughout this situation have shown you have the leadership qualities this clinic needs. Melissa was moved by the recognition. Mr. Thompson, I accept, and I promise I'll work to ensure every employee feels respected and valued here. Perfect. And to all of you, he addressed the group. I want you to know my door will always be open. If you ever notice any misconduct or disrespect, you can come speak to me directly. In the days that followed, Mercy Health Clinic underwent a complete transformation. Richard implemented weekly meetings where staff could voice opinions and suggestions. He created an anonymous reporting channel to ensure problems were identified quickly. Melissa proved to be an excellent supervisor, creating a collaborative environment where everyone felt safe to work and express themselves. The other employees who had resigned were contacted, and many decided to return now that they knew about the changes that had been implemented. The quality of patient care improved dramatically. With motivated employees working in harmony, the clinic became a regional benchmark for medical excellence and a welcoming atmosphere. As for Dr. Jennifer, she faced criminal charges for document forgery, illegal sale of controlled medications, and running a criminal organization. During the trial, more victims of her abusive behavior came forward to testify, including staff from hospitals where she had previously worked. Richard established a stricter hiring policy for senior professionals, including verification of references from colleagues, not just superiors. He also implemented a longer probationary period, with regular evaluations of new hires' relationships with the team. The story spread through the regional medical community as an example of how power abuses can be identified and addressed when leadership is committed to employee well-being. 6 months after the events, Richard organized a gathering to celebrate the clinic's transformation. During the event, he made sure to publicly acknowledge Melissa's courage. "Melissa," he said in front of all the staff, "your bravery in standing firm against injustice was inspiring. You didn't just defend yourself, you defended the values that make an institution truly respectable." "Mr. Richard," Melissa replied emotionally, "I learned that sometimes we must face difficult moments to protect what's right, and I learned we're never alone when we act with integrity." The transformation of Mercy Health Clinic became a successful case study in healthcare personnel management. Richard was invited to give talks on leadership and fostering healthy work environments. He always concluded his speeches with the same reflection. Sometimes, to truly understand an organization, we must see it through the eyes of those working on the front lines. Leaders who isolate themselves in ivory towers can never spot the problems eating away at the organization from within. The clinic thrived, becoming one of the region's top employers, known not just for medical quality but for how it treated its staff. Many healthcare professionals sought positions there, knowing they'd find a respectful, collaborative environment. Melissa became a reference in nursing, consulted by other institutions wanting to implement similar models of participatory management. She often said her experience with Dr. Jennifer, though traumatic, taught her the importance of never passively accepting injustice. Richard continued his practice of occasionally working undercover on the front lines, but now in a scheduled, transparent manner as a regular management tool. Employees knew that at any moment they might be interacting with the clinic's owner, keeping everyone committed to excellent care. The story of Mercy Health Clinic became a powerful reminder that toxic workplaces aren't inevitable, and that leaders committed to real change can completely transform organizational culture. Years later, when Richard reflected on that week he worked undercover, he always thought about how small acts of courage, like Melissa refusing to resign unjustly, could spark profound change. The nurse who was nearly destroyed by a corruption scheme became the symbol of the clinic's new culture. Professional, honest, brave, and always willing to stand up for what's right, even when it requires personal sacrifice. And Richard learned that true leadership isn't about exerting power over others, but about creating conditions where everyone can give their best in an environment of mutual respect and shared purpose. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of courage and transformation. Do you believe Melissa made the right decisions in facing the situation? Share your thoughts in the comments about how we should react when we witness injustices at work. And if you know any similar stories of overcoming adversity, share them with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other inspiring stories like this one.